in today's video, we are going to go over all the books that I read in September 2023 and give you my thoughts and opinions on all the books that I read. Hey guys! So, if it looks like I'm wearing the same outfit as I was in another video, that's because I am. I filmed a lot of these videos on the same day because, you know, you put on cute makeup and why not, right? When you're in the mood to film, you're in the mood to film. I'm going to be showing you and talking to you about all the books that I read in the month of September, and these are in the order that I read them or finished them, and then also I'm going to tell you my stats and stuff at the very end. Also, if I'm looking like behind the camera, it's because I'm looking at my little spreadsheet that has all of the breakdown of the books that I read in September, and like I put their star ratings and I put some stats of like longest book, shortest book, how many books I read, how many pages I read, how many books I got 5 stars, 1 star, blah blah blah. So I'll share all that with you at the end of the video. So I kicked off the month reading a couple of books that you will have seen in my book of the month collab that I did with Briana at Books Coffee Homeschool, and I will link her info down below, but I'll also link up in the cards above our the videos for myself and for her. So one of the last books that we read together was The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. This one was a fantasy book that I read hybridly, so I read it with audio and the physical book, and this one I ended up giving 4 stars. I really enjoyed the whole like journey that everybody was on. There was no romance to it, so it was pure fantasy, but it was very enjoyable to read. It was very different than some of the fantasy that I've read that has like that romance element to it. Then we ended our video with The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna, and this is probably one of the top books that I've read this year. I ended up giving this book 5 stars. It was such a fantastic read. I had been putting it off for so long, and I have no idea why, but it was a historical fiction, which normally I don't gravitate towards historical fiction, but when I do end up reading historical fiction, I end up reading it very highly, so I might be historical fiction girly. But this one, highly recommend checking the trigger warnings if you do plan on reading this one. Next, I read The Last Word by Taylor Adams, and this was a mystery thriller. I was kind of like, it was a little lackluster for me. It didn't like wow me, but it was good. I enjoyed the plot overall. It had like there was a good idea and good intentions behind the idea, but I feel like it wasn't maybe executed as well. So it was just kind of like, not a dud for me, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, like I would recommend this. I didn't guess anything or whatever. But I ended up giving it 3 stars. It was an okay book, definitely one that you might want to pick up for spooky season if you're into mysteries and thrillers. Next up, I started reading Harry Potter with some buddies of mine in a Discord channel. And we started reading Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And I'm just going to talk about all the Harry Potter books that I read in the month of September here, rather than like how I read them like interspersed with the other books that I read. So I read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, which is also known as the Philosopher's Stone in other countries. This is by J.K. Rowling. It was a YA fantasy, as all of the other Harry Potter books are. I read this one hybrid as well. I ended up giving it 4 stars. So it was very fun to kind of get back into the Harry Potter world. I had read this many years ago, probably when I was in middle school, but I actually had never finished the series. So definitely fun getting immersed into this world. And then I read Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and again, this is by J.K. Rowling, YA fantasy. I gave this book 3 stars, so it was just okay. Not as fun as the first one, but not bad either. I enjoyed it still, but it was kind of one of those books that was just like, I wouldn't remember too much about it. The last Harry Potter book I read in September was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which I ended up enjoying. This one I gave 4 stars. There was a lot more like plot and more stuff for the the wizards and witches to get up to this year, but it's very fun, just kind of like following their journey through Hogwarts and learning magic and everything like that. So really enjoyed so far the 3 Harry Potter books that I've read, and in the month of October I'm going to be starting The Goblet of Fire. So that one is a big book, and I think the rest of the series ends up being very big, so it's going to probably take me this month being October and maybe into November to read the rest of the series. Switching gears from Harry Potter, I was anticipating reading this book because I've heard really good things about it being like a cozy kind of book. This is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, and unfortunately this one fell pretty flat for me. I gave it 1 star. I pretty much only give 1 stars to books that I DNF, and at one point I did DNF this and said, oh, well, I have 50 pages left. I'm just gonna go ahead and finish it out. So I did finish it, but I trudged through it. I think I even had the audio for this, and it was just so incredibly boring to me. I don't think, and I feel bad giving 1 stars, but I feel like star rating is honestly for like your enjoyment of the book. Like, I mean, that's part of it. I'm sure there's people who absolutely love this book, but it just was not a book for me. Like, unfortunately, this was just not my cup of tea, and I really, really wanted to like it because I do play Dungeons and Dragons and enjoy playing that, but this was just not my type of fantasy. So I will be unhauling this book, sadly. But if you're interested, I know Travis Baldree has another book coming out. I think it's called like Bookshops and Bone Dust, which is actually a prequel to Legends and Lattes. So if you're interested in reading that, I think that one is coming out sometime in November. I think at the time, before I had read Legends and Lattes, I had requested on NetGalley Bookshops and Bone Dust, but I got declined. So that's okay, because I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it. I probably wouldn't have given good ratings, unfortunately. But if you're interested, that is on NetGalley. Then I started my descent into dark romance. There is a lot of dark romance through the rest of this month. But I read Hooked by Emily McIntyre and really, really enjoyed this. This is essentially like a Peter Pan kind of book, not necessarily a retelling, because I think at the beginning she even says it is not fantasy or retelling. The main character is a villain. So this one kind of follows James, Hook, and then Wendy. Her father's Peter, so it is kind of like Peter Pan inspired, but definitely a very good start to my descent into dark romance. So if you haven't read this series yet, it's really good. You'll see in a few minutes that I read another book by Emily McIntyre this month, and I definitely plan to continue this series. Then on a whim, I picked up Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman, and I fell in love with this book. I gave it 5 freaking stars. This would be really fun to put in like a kind of like a best book of the year bracket of some sorts, because I'd be very curious to see which book ends up on top. But this book was so good, definitely very dark. For these books that I'm saying are dark romances, please check the trigger warnings if you're interested in reading them. I always post now in my video descriptions the link to the book trigger warnings, because I don't want you to go into a book on my recommendation and then your mental health suffers because of something that you thought you would enjoy and totally ended up not enjoying. So I would say check the trigger warnings, but this one is very dark. They get put up in some like very unfortunate circumstances that leads them to some very difficult decisions and then some aftermath and things like that. But I absolutely love this book, and I can't wait to read Lotus by Jennifer Hartman as well. So she's earned a new fan. Then I broke up the little dark romance streak there I had for a little bit and picked up Catherine Center's Hello Stranger. This was a book that has been on my book of the month shelf, that has been on my shelf for a while. I did buy this in July 2023, so not as long as some of the other books that I have, but this one was so fun. I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed the like neuro aspect. If you didn't know, I'm a like psychologist with a neuropsychology background, so for her to have acquired facial blindness or acquired prosopagnosia, it was so interesting to see a story done very, very well. So thank you, Catherine Center, for writing amazing books, because I love all of your books. Then I read an arc on NetGalley called The Rainbow Catcher. This was a graphic novel by Cedric Mahan, Robert Ritchie, and Laura Iorio. I'm not sure if I'm butchering those names, so I'm really sorry if I did. But I gave this one 3 stars. I absolutely loved the color scheme of everything, because they had several different sections, each based on a color of the rainbow. So like it was broken up into the parts of the rainbow. So this was the book, and essentially we have, okay, Violet was the first one. So if you look, all of the graphics are done in violet, indigo, okay, and then the colors kind of change into this more indigo hue, and then green. Here's where you probably notice it a little bit more. So we have green, and then all the graphics are done in like this green hue, and then it just kind of continues through the other colors of the rainbow. So that was a super fun book to read, because of the changing colors. But overall, the plot kind of felt like it was all over the place, unfortunately. So it wasn't terrible. I don't know if it was meant for me, but I did really enjoy the graphics. I also read The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. This was a contemporary romance. I gave this one 3 stars. Kind of felt like it was a little lackluster compared to their other books that I've read. Like, I remember Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating was the first one that I read by them, and really enjoyed that one, but this one was just kind of okay. It's not one that I remember super well, even though I didn't read it that long ago, like probably 2 weeks ago. But this one was just kind of like your standard run-of-the-mill contemporary romance. Then I started a video idea where I basically needed to read a book that I DNF'd. If that video is out, I'll post the card up above. But it was part of my book or treat video, where I had basically pulled a book to read a book that I had DNF'd. So this one I didn't necessarily DNF because it was bad or anything. I just like didn't finish it. I got to the 3rd book and then just like put it down and didn't come back to it. So I finished up this book. So the 3rd book is Scarlet Angel, 4th book is All the Lies, and 5th book is Painted All Red. All of these are by S.T. Abbey, so I just have the book that is 5 books in one. So it's just books 1 through 5. This is a dark romance, so again, check the trigger warnings. But I gave the 3rd book 3 stars, give the 4th book 3 stars, and then I think maybe because the 4th book had a little bit more like wrap up and more action happening, it got 4 stars, so it was definitely the best of the books. Overall, I would probably rate it a 3-star series, because I gave all the books except the last one 3 stars. So if it averages out, it's probably just 3 stars for me. I read Happy Place by Emily Henry. This was one that I had been putting off or avoiding because it wasn't because it was like bad or anything. I was just waiting for the paperback to come out, but I ended up seeing it at my local library and picked it up. Read this one. This is a contemporary romance. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I had a really good time reading it. I loved kind of like the overall message and the story about it. So I feel like all of Emily Henry books I rated 4 stars. I actually got a cute little bag, an Emily Henry bag, which I'll show you. I'll insert a clip here. This is another book of the month book. This is actually from May 2022. So it was nice to kind of like get one of these off of my TBR list. The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. This is a historic fiction horror, and I had a good time reading this. It was very interesting. I read this along with the audio, so hybrid reading, and when I was not reading along with the book, I will say, because I'm not like fluent in Spanish, I had a hard time understanding what they were saying at times, even if it was just a name. Just because maybe I hadn't seen it first, and then when the audio was saying it, it was really hard for me to understand, like, at first. Oh, like, that's a name, or that's the name of a place, or something. But overall, this was a really good horror book. I enjoyed reading it. I know that Isabel Cañas has another book out. I think it's called Vampires of El Norte. and that might be a good book to pick up in November, so I might try to see what that is about. But I gave The Hacienda 4 stars. And as I said earlier, you're gonna see me talk about another Emily McIntyre book. So I read Wretched by her. This one was a Wizard of Oz retelling. So it follows Evelina Westerly, which is Dorothy's sister. And she really hates Dorothy because Dorothy's kind of like a B word. And it also follows Nicholas Woodsworth, which I think is supposed to be the Tin Man, because if you look up the Tin Man's name in The Wizard of Oz, it's Nicholas Chopper. So Nicholas Woodsworth kind of makes sense. And then it was talking about him like not having a heart. He's the one that's looking for a heart. So there's heart in here. So I think those were the kind of clues here. But this one was fun. I enjoyed this one a little more than Hooked. It is a little darker. I think some people don't like this one as much, and I'm not quite sure why. But I had a fun time with this one. Definitely recommend Emily McIntyre. She's going to definitely become one of my top auto buy authors. And I do have all of the other books in the Never After series, so I'm very excited to read those sometime soon. Y'all are not ready for this next one. So I was recommended this book by a friend, Cassidy. So thank you for recommending Satan's Fair. This is the like novella prequel to the cat and mouse duet Haunting and Hunting Adeline. This kind of follows Sibby or Sybil, and like kind of the reason why she is the way she is. This is definitely a very, very dark book. If you're not into smut, murder, like these different kinds of trigger warnings, I would not read this book or recommend this book, but definitely check the trigger warnings if you want to watch this. Very interesting, very, very interesting read. I gave it 4 stars, and it's a very strong 4 stars. The last book that I read in September was The Long Game by Elena Armas, and this is the author of The Spanish Love Deception. This was kind of a cute book, but I really enjoyed it for the kids of the book, like the children, the 9-year-old children on the soccer team. Super adorable, but I feel like in some ways it was a little weird because they were very well versed in like horoscopes, and they had like very good like words of wisdom to give to adults, which I feel like is not characteristic of 9-year-olds, but I suppose that's kind of like the fun part about this book. But I actually didn't really care much for the romance between the 2 main characters. I was living for the kids. So I gave this book 3 stars. Overall, not a bad book, but I enjoyed it still. It was definitely long, probably longer than it needed to be, but not a bad book to get into. And it is kind of like a sports romance as well. It's following soccer or football. So if you're interested in that, book for you. Overall, I read 20 books in the month of September. I read 6,118 pages. My longest book was The Great Alone at 545 pages. My shortest book was The Rainbow Catcher, which was a graphic novel. I read 1 physical book, so that means like purely with my eyes, which was Satan's Fair. I read 1 ebook, which was The Rainbow Catcher, and then everything else I read hybrid, and then none purely audio. I had 1 1-star, no 2 stars, 7 3 stars, 10 4 stars, and 3 5 stars this month. I read 5 contemporary romances / sports romances, 7 dark romance, 1 fantasy, 1 fantasy romance, 1 graphic novel, 1 historical fiction, 1 horror, 1 mystery thriller, and 3 YA fantasy. So it's definitely a very fun-filled month. I think some of my numbers are off too, so if some of the numbers don't equal 20, but they equal 21, it's because I have a book in here that I DNF'd from a long time ago that I counted for that month, and it also kind of got mixed up into this month because I finally actually finished it, but I included it in a different month. So if the numbers are a little off, that's why. But basically, I read 20 books this month. So thanks guys for sticking around to watch my video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Can't wait for you guys to see what I'm going to be reading in October. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye!